we did this first problem pretty much together. Did we get a chance to get to the last one about cause and effect and such? Okay. Let's actually, before we get started, let's remember two main things that we learned from observational study and an experiment. An experiment has to have a treatment. You had to have been randomly assigned into treatment groups. Okay? And if you are randomly assigned into treatment groups, then you have the right to be able to infer what? Cause and effect. Okay? Now, the only way that you can generalize to the whole population is if you have been, you can generalize to the whole population, it's because you have been, what's it called? Key phrase that you have been taken from the whole population. No, it starts with randomly though. Randomly selected. If you have randomly selected from the population, then you can generalize to that population. And that's it. That's as good as it gets. You have to be randomly selected to generalize to the population, and you have to randomly assign a treatment group to be able to do cause and effect. Okay? So that's pretty much a summary of those randomly assigned and randomly selected. Now, let's go through the rest of these kind of quickly to see what we could do. Additionally, I really want to make sure that you understand what this means, parameter of interest. Okay? All right. So this one did not have a treatment group. It was the 360,000 Swedish men. So therefore, they were the subjects, and they studied their past medical records. So what they kind of did is they took all of these files and they made a pile of all of the ones that were obese or had high blood pressure. Okay? Then they made a pile of all the files that did not have obesity or high blood pressure. Okay? Overweight. And then they counted how many of those people had kidney cancer. And they wanted to see if the proportion in the obese high blood pressure group that had kidney cancer in their life is significantly different from the group that didn't have obesity. So what they would be looking for is, here's the overweight or high blood pressure group, and here's the not. Okay, so here's the group, and here's this group. We're going to see what percent of these get kidney cancer. We're going to see what percent of these get kidney cancer. Okay? And then, what are we going to do with those two percentages? Compare them and see if they are significantly different. So we are going to see if they are significantly different. Well, guess what? People wonder, what number is significantly different? Well, guess what? It's a whole bunch of different numbers depending on a lot of different things, and we learn how to compute those numbers second semester. Okay? So we'll be able to figure out if this difference is quote-unquote significant second semester. So we don't now, we just kind of understand the concept of it happening. Okay, so the subjects, of course, were the Swedish men, and then the parameter of interest is really what I was just talking about right here. Parameter of interest is this difference in kidney cancer rate between these two groups. And do you remember that parameter is a number that you get for the whole population? What is it called if it's just for a little sample? It does start with an S. No, it's called the statistic. It's called the statistic if you get a number for just a sample. It's called a parameter for getting a number for like the whole population. And remember, those are written with Greek letters, and the statistic is just written with regular letters. All right. So that's what the parameter of interest is. We're trying to test that for the whole population. I think what they're hoping is that these 360,000 Swedish files are going to be representative of all men. I think that's what the intent of this is. Can they do cause and effect? Can this be a cause and effect? Good. No, because it's observational study, not an experiment. So the best they can do is say this. If you were a journalist and you were making a headline title, you could say something like this. Swedish study finds that overweight men with, overweight or men with high blood pressure have an increased risk of kidney cancer over men without overweightness and high blood pressure. Okay, that's about as good as you can say that there's a link or there's a relationship. You cannot say being overweight or having high blood pressure causes kidney cancer. All right, so let's not go back slowly through the rest of these. Here was 459 subjects. We do not know if they were taken randomly or if they volunteered for this. Okay, they were randomly assigned. So what do we have going on? An experiment or an observational study? Okay, we have an experiment. So we can then infer cause and effect. Do you know what we can generalize to? All that we can generalize to is the 459 subjects in this study, because we don't know if they were randomly chosen. They may have just volunteered, and if they volunteer, that's a different quality. So there you go. I put that there were 3 levels because they told us up here that there are 3 groups. I didn't really know what the 3 groups were, and they didn't describe them very well. So I can't tell you what they are, but I know that they put them into 3 groups, so I went ahead and just said, I guess there's 3 levels of food and stuff. They didn't say if it's blind or not, but what do you think about that? If you are given a particular diet, do you think you know what treatment you're in? You know what treatment group you're in? Yeah. Okay. So again, you can confer cause and effect, but you cannot generalize the population because I don't know that they're randomly selected. All right. Here we had something where it was for insomniacs. Okay, these people were not sleeping, and they had 40 volunteers. So my first question is, these are 40 volunteers. What can I generalize to? Correct. You only have the ability to generalize to the 40 volunteers. So me personally, I'm like, well, what's the point? You know? Right. I don't think you technically can, because that would involve, the question is, can you experiment on the population and generalize, technically generalize the population? That would mean you randomly selected from the population, and those people were in your experiment. But because we have, ethical issues, then they kind of then technically have the right to be able to say, okay, yes, I'll be in your thing, and then that makes them volunteers. And so I personally do not know all of the ethic issues. And in fact, they have an online master's in statistics degree from A&M, and I'm kind of interested in doing that because I want to know, what's that line of ethics? How can you actually take an experiment and then infer it to a larger group? Because here, technically, we can only do these 40 volunteers. So I don't know the answer to that question. I wish I did. So there you go. They had, hey, remember, think about our little experiment assembly line. Okay, here comes 40 volunteers. They're in here. They're going into this assembly line. They then go through the first hula hoop, and the first hula hoop is called what? Diet. The first factor is diet. So they are either then assigned to what? Desserts or no desserts. No desserts or no desserts. So this first hula hoop is going to tell them what kind of diet they have to follow. So they're going to do desserts, no desserts. So then they continue on the experiment assembly line, and they go through another factor hula hoop, and that factor is called the exercise. That's now they get assigned exercise or no exercise. So see, we have 2 factors. They go through the diet hula hoop, or they go through the exercise hula hoop. And then within each one of those, there's 2 levels. Dessert or no dessert, exercise or no exercise. I kind of made a rough sketch here, which ends up making 1, 2, 3, 4 treatment groups. Alright. How about being blinded? They don't say it is, but what do you know about the people? Yeah, they're pretty much going to know if they're told that they have to eat desserts and exercise or whatever. We can only generalize to those 40, but it is an experiment, so you can do cause and effect. All right. This one is an observational study. Now, how do I know it's retrospective? Because we are studying what? Past medical records. If it was prospective, I would identify them and then follow them forward. So because it is analyzing things from the past, that's retrospective. What you are interested in seeing is if there a difference in the average lifespan from mothers with sons and mothers with daughters. They did find there was a difference. Okay? You cannot do infer cause and effect because it is a study. Good. I also hesitate to make any generalization on this because it's so long ago and so much has changed since 1870. These were taken from church records, so does that mean it's under coverage because it's only one type of person? I don't know. So I pretty much would, I don't know what the point is anyways of this one. So, next. Well, the problem that I have with this is that when I did this problem for the first time, my very first year teaching this course, I would do the problem and then I would reference the book answer key to kind of keep myself going along. And look, I could tell from what I wrote my first year taking this, doing this homework, is that I thought it was an experiment. Because I thought that the movie was the treatment. I thought they were assigned to treatment of the movie, and then the response was if they cried or not. Well, when I looked it up in the back of the book, it made me upset to see that the book said it's an observational study, and I really don't fully understand the intricacies of what they're saying right here. I kind of still disagree. But I'll read it to you, and then we'll go on from there. I can tell you AP will not be this specific. AP would be much more clear-cut as to if they're assigning an actual treatment or not. They wouldn't try to trick you like this. They said in the book that this is not an experiment because the movie was just a trigger to possibly evoke a stimulus, whereas a treatment is designed to change or influence the response variable. And my answer is, hello, the movie was designed to influence the response variable, which was if you cried. So, anyway, so I understand your struggles. I had them myself. Next. Okay, this was people volunteered, I guess, to be exposed to the cold virus and then to check out the herbal compound or have a sugar compound, which was the placebo. Since there was a placebo, the patients did not know if they got the treatment or the sugar pill, so they were then what? They were blinded. Very good. There was only one factor. It was the medicine at the 2 levels. They were blinded because the placebo, it's an experiment, so we can infer what? Cause and effect. But they were volunteers. So can we generalize these findings of the herbal benefits to all people? And the answer to that is no, we cannot. And let me just kind of see if this makes sense. Probably the people that volunteered for this are relatively healthy because they knew that they were going to be exposed to the cold virus, which is a relatively insignificant, event. However, if you were a person that had other health hazards, like you were an elderly person and have had pneumonia before or whatever, or a very young baby that has lots of ear infections, whatever, do you think that you would you put yourself into harm's way? No. So it would be my guess that these subjects are relatively healthy subjects that did not think a cold is going to, really, in the grand scheme of things, hurt them. So I wouldn't say that these could be generalized to all people, maybe just relatively healthy people. All right, is that it? Oh, the last one was the rats. The rats, it was an experiment. I saw several people thinking this was a study. No, the treatment was sleep deprivation. And there were only 3 treatment groups. There were not 4. If you thought there were 4, then you thought the normal bedtime was a group. They did not let any of the rats go to sleep at their normal bedtime. They took all of their glycogen levels. They checked all of their glycogen levels at their normal bedtime and then imposed treatment upon them. The treatment was either a 6-hour having to stay awake, and then they measured to see what's the difference in glycogen level. Or you were in the 12-hour stay awake group, and then they said, okay, well, from here to here, what's the difference in glycogen level? And the third treatment group is 24 hours staying awake, and from here to here, what's the difference in your glycogen level? So normal bedtime, none of them went to bed at normal bedtime. We just did that as a baseline measurement, so there were only 3 treatment groups. It was an experiment. I mean, is it blinded? I don't know. They're rats. And you measured glycogen levels, so did the scientists need to be, blinded? No. The only thing I want to say is this. I'm going to plant a seed. We're going to eventually talk about this word in Chapter 8, whenever we go back around to Chapter 8. Do you think that it's reasonable to take these results and generalize them to humans? No, these were rats. So, this would be done on this type of scale. You would probably, if you saw reasonable results here, then you would maybe then increase your animal type, but you would do this eventually to primates and then maybe with humans or whatever. But you cannot speculate to humans from these rats. That would be called extrapolating. Okay, done with going over that. Yes. I don't know, probably maybe when you see them start going to sleep, make them, poke them with a stick or something. I don't know. Give them some food. I don't know. How do you keep them awake? I don't know. Yeah, it could be shock collar. Okay. Now, I want you to pull out your notes that are called Principles of Experimental Design. We worked on this Friday, and we left some of it out, and we're going to continue that right now. So let me give you a second to pull that out. I want you to turn to number 3. Okay. Number 3 is the problem about shingles, the very painful skin rash. Okay. That's on your nerve index and everything. Friday, we talked about the placebo. You would want a placebo if you measured pain, but you wouldn't necessarily need a placebo if you were just measuring the improvement of the rash. This was about this person having a new ointment and comparing it to the current ointment on the market. 18 patients volunteered. So the fact that 18 patients volunteered for this is going to limit the scope at which you could do what? Generalize. You could only then generalize to these 18 volunteers. But hopefully then that would give you more information if you want to go further and get to a point where you can generalize more. So, we stopped on our notes on Friday at describe how you will conduct the experiment and include an explanation of your randomization method. So we're going to do that now. We did one of these on number 1 last Thursday, but I want to continue with this. So, here we go. What are you going to start with? What's the population? What can you generalize to on this? That's what's always at the start. Yep, 18 volunteers that have shingles. That's all as far as we can generalize to. So that's going to be your start here. 18 volunteers with shingles. Now, what do you want to do with this experiment? What are these people going to be doing to this experiment? Okay, they're going to be applying ointment. Are all 18 going to be applying the same ointment or what? Okay, tell me. So what do you want to do with these 18 people? randomly assign them into two groups. Okay, you want to put 9 in each group? Okay, so write that down. 9 patients, 9 patients, and I'm going to write new ointment and current ointment. All right. Now, we cannot stop there because in the directions it specifically says include an explanation of your randomization method. And as we saw on Friday, saying I will randomly hand out a 1 or a 2 is not adequate. Okay? Because I, quote unquote, randomly handed you a 1 or a 2, and was that truly a good way of randomizing and equalizing the groups? No. So just saying that is not good. But what do I write here across these blue lines that I'm going to be doing? What was it called? Okay, good. So I first write random assignment, and then I'm going to specifically describe what that is because it told me to do that. So I'm going to draw a little arrow to it, and I'm going to describe what that is. Okay, so what is it? What do we want to start with? Oh, okay. So Tori is very much more of a humanist. She doesn't want to put the people in the bag. She wants to put the names of the people in the bag, so that's fine. Okay? Put the names of the 18 people or 18 volunteers in a bag. Okay? What do we write next so that it is clear that we understand randomization is important?
Shake it up.
Hey, shake well. Okay, now then, how do I assign them into their groups? Okay, so I'm going to draw 9 names and assign to new group. And then the rest are going to go to the current ointment group. All right, very good. Okay, so in this experiment, what happens? I think time passes because I don't know how long that is. You know, I'm not a doctor, I'm not experienced, but I do know that time passes so that then, right here, I'm going to be measuring something. What am I going to be measuring on those patients? Good. How much their rash has improved. So in order to get one number right here, that's going to be what? An average. They'll probably put like a scale on the rash improvement. So the average rash improvement. And here's average rash improvement. Okay, and then at the end, after I know what the average is for each one of these, I would do what? Yes, I'm going to compare those numbers. Now, when I compare those numbers, that's when next semester comes in. That's when I see, is that a significant amount of improvement between the two ointments to say that the new ointment is clearly better? Okay? All right, very good. Now, to what population can your results be inferred? Explain. So what can our results be inferred to? Good. They can be inferred to only the 18 volunteers. And why are we limited to just the 18 volunteers? Perfect. Because they were not And that's the key. Randomly selected. Very good. That's the key phrase. To be able to generalize. Therefore, question E says, what if you had taken a random sample from all shingle sufferers, then what would happen? Then you can generalize to all shingle sufferers. Now, I don't know what the ethical issue is on that. I mean, surely, like Pierce was saying, you have to have consent. You can't just say, you have been randomly selected, you have to put this ointment on, So I don't know the exact rules on that, but there you go. Okay, very good. Now, I would like for you to skip over to number 5 that we started on Friday, and we did not complete it. On Friday, we learned what the experimental units were, and what were our experiments? They were the tomatoes, and we also learned what the treatments were, which were the fertilizer was either full strength, half strength, or no strength. So, we skipped this part, and I said we're going to do that on Monday. Well, Monday's here, so let's do it. Describe how you can design an experiment to test the company's claim. And so my first thing is, you should start over there on the left what you plan to generalize to. What do you want to generalize to? Yeah, probably all. We could probably generalize to like all tomatoes of a certain kind. Do you think? Or just that? Okay, I think so. We could say this is how this fertilizer will affect this type of tomato. All right, so let's pick a type because I don't know, I'm not a horticulturist and know all that kind of stuff. So I'm going to say let's generalize to all cherry tomatoes. My husband eats those like grapes. Anybody else do that? So I want to generalize to all cherry tomato. These are plants. We're talking about how the plants then grow juicier and tastier tomatoes. Alright, so, you put an E on there? I don't know. I don't know. See? I don't know. Okay, here we go. Now, I want to tell you that we can't do this experiment with all tomato plants, right? So we're going to dwindle it down to our sample, and this is a number that you don't know yet, but we're generally going to want to have 30 in each one of our groups. So therefore, we're going to let's go to 90 tomato plants. I think the E goes on there when you do an S, right? Okay. So we're going to 90 tomato plants. Now, how do you want to say that you went from all cherry tomato plants to 90 tomato plants? Okay, but what's this called? Random what? Selection. When you went from the whole population down to what you're going to use in your experiment, this is random selection. Randomly selected. I'm kind of going to leave this off because I don't know how you would put all cherry tomato plants in the world in a bag. But somehow you would describe that. They probably will never ask you to describe how you randomly selected from the entire population because that's kind of difficult to comprehend. So let's go from our 90 tomato plants. What do you want to do from our 90 tomato plants? We want to split them into 3 groups. Very good. So it would make sense to put how many in each group? 30 plants. And we're going to give this first group full strength fertilizer. We're going to give the second group half strength fertilizer. And then we're going to give the last 30 plants no strength fertilizer. Now, I probably should put, and I don't even think I did in my other classes, but I probably should say all other conditions are the same, right? All other growing conditions are the same. Wind, sun, soil, all other growing conditions are the same. I just think that's probably an important thing. So therefore, the only difference in these growing conditions is one thing, and what is it? The fertilizer. Very good. So time passes. I'm not a horticulturist, so I do not know. And what do we end up doing after time passes? Okay, so we're going to check them for what? Let's see. I guess technically we're checking for the juiciness and the tastiness. That's the claim. So hopefully some person's going to like have a numerical value for the, so we're going to get, from those 30 plants, we're going to get a what? Average, probably a juiciness and tastiness number. Okay? I don't know what that is. This will be the same. I don't eat tomatoes, so I couldn't tell you how that's done. So, I'm getting lazy and I don't want to write that again. What would we do at the end? We would compare the juiciness and the tastiness rating, or the average juiciness and tastiness. We would be seeing, is there a significant difference from one to the other? And that number is yet to be learned second semester. And from that we could say, we can tell from our thing that there is a significant difference in yada yada yada, the fertilizer is the reason that it's juicier and tastier. Okay, very good. Now, that's pretty much the only other one that I want to go through with this on you. So you have some examples. I left off an important part. I left off this part right here. What has to happen right here? This is not selection. This is assignment. And we need a description right here. So Zach is going to come up here and write this, what you tell him, tell Herschel is, while I get that phone. So tell Herschel it's right.
Well, I need to write.
Okay, go. What do you think about random assignment? What should he do? Put what in a bag? What tomato plant? Okay. Okay. So Sky says number of it. Let's just make it easy and put 90 tomato plants in a bag. Okay. You could go through assigning them all a unique number and yada yada yada, but let's just put 90 tomato plants in a bag. And how do you consciously notate that they are what's it called? Randomized? How do you notate they're randomized? Shake well. Shake well. And then what are you going to do? You're going to pull out 30 plants for each group. Okay, good. That's how you randomly assign those 90. So you did not have bias. You did not put the healthier looking ones in the one group, okay? And the wimpiest looking ones in another group. Okay, very good. Thank you. So your Frappy 5.1 and your Frappy 5.2 are due tomorrow.